Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Zach with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. 11 a.m., still at it. Joe Judge on my mind, still pissing me off. And I think that we got to talk about, is he on the hot seat right now? Are the Giants preparing to part ways with him? Does he deserve another season as the New York Giants head coach? Now, a lot of factors and variables go into this. Of course, the in-game mistakes, the decision-making with the timeouts, the personnel decision, the coaching staff hires. There's a lot of things that have impacted him negatively that may have not been his fault, like the hiring of Jason Garrett, which I believe personally was a Gettleman and John Mara decision to help him transition to head coach. Like, that's not his fault. The drafts that he kind of inherited from Dave Gettleman before he was there, a lot of those players are either useless or just not on the team anymore. Look at those third round picks. It's a graveyard. Lorenzo Carter, O'Shane Exim, just a lot of really, really bad selections. The foundation in the youth of this team was really, really hurt during those first 2 years under Gettleman. It's gotten better the last two seasons. We have guys like Tay Crowder who are making an impact. You have guys like Aaron Robinson who have looked good this year. I mean, Azeez Ojulari was a steal. Andrew Thomas is a bookend left tackle. The drafts have looked phenomenally, or not, maybe phenomenally isn't the right word, just better in general since Joe Judge has been here. And I think that's something that we should take away and look at and say, okay, the drafting has been better, but the team hasn't gotten better. His decision-making as a head coach hasn't gotten better. So there are a couple of things I want to discuss on whether, we'll try to play devil's advocate here, why they should take him, why they should let him go. There's a couple of reasons on both sides of things, Anthony. Before we dive into this topic, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. I'm pretty sure everybody who's been watching this channel for a long time knows that at one point I did elect myself the leader of the Joe Judge fan club. I've been a huge fan of Joe Judge since his beginning of his tenure as the head coach of the New York Giants. However, my love for Joe Judge has kind of faltered. I'm not really in love with the guy anymore. I'm not too crazy about him. I think that he has mismanaged this team in a couple of ways. I'm not so crazy about him. And honestly, if the main question of this video needs to be answered right now, yes, I believe he should be on the hot seat. Now we'll get into why, and it might not always be his fault as to why. It might be because the situation around him sucked and he just couldn't make the most of it. However, that's kind of the point, right? You get a really good head coach who steps in here and makes the most of this, and the Giants might be a good team. But Joe Judge just wasn't able to do that. I think that the majority of the blame about why the Giants are bad, all of it really goes to John Mara, but the majority on everybody underneath John Mara probably goes to Dave Gettleman before it goes to Joe Judge. However, those two work in tandem, and we have not seen exactly perfect football from Joe Judge, and definitely not the football that he promised to deliver when he was introduced in his press conference. I mean, the mismanagements of the timeouts do not hit home for the detail-oriented coach that he claimed to be when he was introduced here. So there's a lot of issues with really the Giants front office and management in large. However, Joe Judge, yes, I believe he should be on the hot seat. He has mismanaged many, many different things with this team over the past year and a half. And it's kind of reaching a boiling point. No, I don't really want to see him get fired. However, do you all see a long-term future of success with Joe Judge at the helm after what you've seen this season? That's really the main question that you have to ask yourselves. And that's what the Giants, John Mara, Steve Tisch, that's what they're going to have to ask themselves at season's end.
Yeah, and for the purpose of this video specifically, I think I'm just gonna play the role of devil's advocate. I'm gonna have you kind of be the guy who's like, we should get rid of him, and then I'll play the guy who's like, I think we should keep him. And I think that's kind of a reasonable way to go about this. So the reason I think that Joe Judge should be kept is simple. He's been the head coach for 2 years. He's still a very young head coach, right? It's like any other player. You draft a player, maybe he's not good the first 2 years, and then suddenly he becomes a star. Look at Andrew Thomas. We were ready to kick him to the curb last year after a bad season, and now he's arguably one of the best players on this team. So maybe it takes a couple years to get get your feet wet, get your footing in the NFL, and I think that applies to head coach as well. It's not an easy job. It's probably one of the harder jobs in the league to have. You're managing multiple different levels of the field or levels of the team, from the practice squad to the reserves to the starters to making sure everything is working smoothly and efficiently, plus the in-game decision-making. The way I think that, Joe Judge should move forward with this is essentially taking a little bit of pressure off himself, right? And what that means, go out and hire a guy to help you with timeout coordinating and clock management. That would be my first step in helping Joe Judge. I think he's a little bit too prideful. I think he's a little bit too egotistical at times, and that holds him back because he has weaknesses, and he needs to acknowledge that he has weaknesses. And if he can come to that conclusion and say, I need help with this, I think it'll help him in the long term. I think he's built a pretty solid coaching staff, in my opinion. I just don't think the personnel is there yet, right? The offensive line personnel is a disaster. Things just aren't panning out. Dave Gettleman gave him absolutely nothing to work with. He's done a good job in the draft the past 2 years. They've gotten a couple of good players and foundational pieces. But before that, it was an absolute graveyard. He inherited guys like Nate Solder. He inherited guys like Will Hernandez. Inherited guys, that just weren't ready to be, full-time starters or really make this team better. He inherited Daniel Jones. I think that for the most part, you're looking at Joe Judge and you're saying he was given a lot of pieces that really weren't his to begin with and was forced to kind of work around it. So I don't blame him entirely for the mismanagement and the personnel misdevelopment, because some of those players just were not good in the first place. And they weren't, when they were drafted, may have been drafted in the wrong spot or shouldn't have been drafted at all. I blame Dave Gettleman for that primarily, but for the purpose of Joe Judge, me being on the side of keeping him, I think that, he's done some good things here. I think, like I said, bringing in a coach to help him with time management would really mask a lot of deficiencies that we're seeing. The coaching staff isn't bad. You know what I mean? It's not awful. Patrick Graham, I like Patrick Graham. He has some bad games every now and then, but he's picked it up. He's playing with a lot of reserves right now. Keep that in mind. He doesn't have Adoree Jackson, doesn't have Blake Martinez. His outside linebacker core is really thin and really inexperienced. He's working with a lot of talent deficiencies, and he's still putting up really good production and showing us that he deserves to be that DC moving forward. I think that's a phenomenal coach right there. That's a guy that can supplement deficiencies, and he's done a great job doing that. I will say that the offense has done him no favors. They can't stay on the field. They keep the defense on the field all the time. Rob Sale at offensive line coach. He was given arguably some of the worst talent in the league to work with, and he's done as well a job as anyone could possibly do. Look at the step forward that God forbid, that Andrew Thomas has taken forward, right? The steps that Andrew Thomas has taken forward, I give Rob Sale a lot of credit for helping him there. That stood out to me a ton. Look at the running backs, definitely a problem. Saquon's injury history is really troublesome, but Devontae Booker's look good. Burton Burns has done a good job developing those guys. Jerome Henderson, the DBs, they look phenomenal. Look at the growth of Xavier McKinney, Coach Chaos. There's a lot of good coaches on the staff. I just don't think the personnel is there, and I think the offensive line is a catalyst behind their struggles. The defense, I like. I think we could use a couple extra pieces, but I think the defense is good enough. If Joe Judge comes back next year, I wouldn't be necessarily upset. I wouldn't be pissed off. I'd say the GM and him need to be in sync. They need to understand that, Daniel Jones, maybe he's not the guy. They need to be on the same page in the sense that, there are things this team needs to do moving forward that, may end up shaking things up, even if it involves a full restart. Joe Judge needs to be on board with potentially hitting the restart button and being the head coach for that process. He's already been here for 2 years. He has the experience. I mean, at this point, though, it's been all talk, right? He's been a lot of talk, not a lot of action. I blame him for a lot, but, a lot of this blame also gets spread out to multiple spots, Anthony. But, you're looking at Joe Judge right now. Why are you like, I don't want him here? I think that, and I think the main argument here is a new GM might want to pick the new head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I've never said that I don't want him here, but that is the main argument, and I'll dive into that. But first, I do want to kind of support one of the points that you made with Joe Judge being a very young coach and how he could potentially turn it around in his third season. We've actually seen that with another coach in the league, Zach Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals. He's only 38. Joe Judge is 39. Very comparable in terms of age and experience. However, they do have different avenues of getting to the head coaching spot. Of course, Zach Taylor was quarterback's coach for the Los Angeles Rams before being head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. But you look at his first two seasons, you look at Zach Taylor, 2-14, 4-11, third season, 7-5, and they look like one of the best teams in the AFC. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase really coming along nicely. So you can always say maybe the Giants could have that kind of third-year turnaround under Joe Judge. First 2 years have honestly been better than Zach Taylor's first 2 years, so maybe that third year they can really turn it around. And kind of a comparable roster in a way because they both have terrible offensive lines, young quarterbacks that need to break through, or maybe the Giants need a rookie quarterback to be the catalyst for that team. Who knows, but we'll see. So I agree with your point there. A third year could do a lot for a head coach. Give them 3 years and maybe you could see things turn around. If you do think about it, the Giants' last two head coaches, Ben McAdoo, Pat Shermer, never got to see a third year. So maybe one of those guys could have turned it around after 3 years. Maybe if we're going back in time, the Giants made some mistakes cutting those guys loose too soon. I don't necessarily think so, but you never know. And that's probably an argument for keeping Joe Judge for an extra year. So, like I said, I don't want to see Joe Judge get fired necessarily. Yes, I believe he should be on the hot seat. I'm not rooting for him to get fired. And honestly, I hope that he doesn't. But one of the reasons that I think he is on the hot seat, one of the reasons that I think he might get fired, yes, you mentioned it, Alex, a new general manager coming in. They might want their own head coach. So let's say that the Giants get really out of the box and take some general manager from, like, I don't know, let's say the Chargers, somebody in the Chargers front office, and he has zero connections to Bill Belichick, to Joe Judge, to anybody that works with the Giants right now. He might not want to step in and make a working relationship with Joe Judge. He might want to make a working relationship with someone that was on the Chargers staff. What if the Giants go and they get Brian Dabble as their next head coach, right? Then we're not going to be complaining. So, I mean, as great as Joe Judge seemed to be at the beginning, as much as I like the guy Joe Judge, I think he's awesome, very charitable man, very cool person, whatever, blah blah blah. The Giants general manager is the key to turning this team around. The head coach is not the key right now. The Giants have to fix their personnel. They have to fix their roster. They have to fix their salary cap space, and they have to fix how they allocate their resources to specific positions. That's nothing that a head coach can do. That's all on the general manager. Dave Gettleman is gone. He's not coming back next year. Thank God. However, I don't know who's coming in to replace him. No one does. It sounds like the Giants are going to go with somebody outside of the organization. Thank God once again. However, we don't know who that is. We don't know if he likes Joe Judge, if he wants to work with Joe Judge. We don't know who the next general manager is going to be. And that is what brings uncertainty to Joe Judge's fate. The fact that we have uncertainty as to the general manager position is going to bring the uncertainty to the head coach position. So that's my main argument as to why Joe Judge should be on the hot seat. Because if we are able to get a top tier general manager candidate to be hired for the Giants, and he doesn't want Joe Judge, honestly, I'm fine with sacrificing Joe Judge in order to get the better general manager candidate. That's super important to me. I think the general manager position is a number one thing that the Giants need to knock out of the park this offseason. More than any draft pick, they have to knock out that general manager position, because that is how they're going to knock those draft picks out of the park. Dave Gettleman not getting it done, screwing things up year after year, day after day. So it's time for the Giants to make a major change at general manager, and whatever he wants at that head coaching position, that's what he gets.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so going away from my alter ego of a guy that like is trying to convince you that Joe Judge is worthy of staying here, one of the things that really irks me about his style is how conservative he is, right? So against the
Ugh.
Dolphins, we're talking about the Giants punted on 4th and 3 from the Dolphins 47-yard line early in the game, and then on 4th and 4 from the Dolphins 48-yard line with the score tied late in the second quarter, and on 4th and 2 from the Dolphins 46-yard line, trailing by 4 points late in the third quarter. So 3 times the Giants punted on 4th and 3, 4th and 4, and 4th and 2 in the Dolphins territory. That is like, I mean, by all accounts, is just pussy football. It's just freaking conservative bullshit football. I mean, look, Joe Judge thinks he's like the know-it-all, like his gut instinct is more correct than analytics. And he said this to back up that what I just said. You can look at a stat sheet all you want. I promise you, if Excel was going to win football games, Bill Gates would be killing it right now. And I can promise you, if Bill Gates decided to shift his attention to football, he'd be killing it right now. Amazon shifted their attention to statistics in football. They're killing it right now. A lot of teams use next-gen stats. A lot of teams use all these analytical variables to determine what to do in certain situations. Joe Judge with Dave Gettleman seem to be living in the prehistoric era, with fighting with Neanderthals with a freaking stick. They need to be using machine guns and modern day warfare in football games to be winning, because right now they're playing pussy football, and it's really, really annoying to watch because the Giants miss opportunities to win games, to put points on the board, to give their team a chance. Instead, they have Riley Dixon punting it into the end zone, and they're getting it at the 25-yard line anyway. And they're marching down the field and scoring, or they're getting stopped. And the logic behind Joe Judge's decisions is what really annoys me, right? Because think about this. Joe Judge, on multiple occasions this year, has said, I trust my defense to get the job done, right? So why not go for it on your offense in the opposing team's territory if you have all that faith in your defense to make a stop? It doesn't make any sense logically. He's saying one thing and doing the other. That is what really pisses me off about Joe Judge. He came out in his opening press conference and said to us, we're going to go and we're going to punch guys in the mouth for 60 minutes and we're going to be aggressive and a downfield team. And instead, he did the exact opposite. He's pussyfooting on 4th and 2. He's not taking shots. He's not being aggressive. And it's really showing right now in the Giants' win and loss record. That is what pisses me off the most, in addition to the timeout situations. His in-game management style is not good. It is, in fact, it's probably one of the worst in the league. His decision-making has lost us multiple games. Multiple games, okay? I am tired of it, right? It's at this point, that is why we need to move on from Joe Judge, because I do not trust him as an in-game head coach manager. You know what I mean? I do not trust him in that way. If your head coach is losing games for you and putting you in positions to lose, you have to move on immediately. It doesn't matter. Everything else doesn't matter, right? If your head coach is putting your team in a position to lose, the scouting doesn't matter. The practicing doesn't matter. You know, because if your head coach is putting your players in a position of disadvantage, that is when you have a problem. If he acknowledges that and decides I need to bring in somebody else to help me in those categories, then I'd consider keeping him. But right now, he has written his letter. He's written his resignation letter with what he's put on the field. That's my actual opinion. I tried to be the alter ego and before, but ultimately I can't bury those opinions.
Yeah,
I
maybe
don't know.
maybe we should have swapped roles before this because I think that I'm a little more positive on Joe Judge than you are after hearing all of that. I do still like Joe Judge to some extent. I'm very disappointed in his performance recently, and I got to agree with you, Alex. He does coach a football game like an absolute pussy. I mean, the punting. I was in the stadium. Okay, when they had that 4th and 2, I was there. I was at the game. I was screaming, "Go for it! Go for it! What are you doing? Go for it!" Everyone around me, go for it, unless they're a Dolphins fan. Then they're like, yeah, punt the football, because they all knew that was a bad decision. Everyone in the stadium knew Joe Judge was making a bad decision, but who didn't know? Joe Judge didn't know. And that's a major problem. He never seems to know when he's making a bad decision. He just doubles down on it. And yes, the whole thing of lying kind of in his introductory press conference, claiming to be one thing and then being a totally different thing, it's disappointing. That just adds to the disappointment of Joe Judge. And another thing is when he got here, he said he was going to be using analytics. He mentioned analytics as a tool to help him generate wins. And now he's kind of ignored them completely. And if you look at the last head coaches, the last general managers that the Giants have had that have ignored analytics, they are the ones that don't succeed. Analytics are honestly the key to, it's a buzzword. Analytics is a buzzword. Analytics is finding intense data, statistics that can help you get a competitive edge. That's all that it is. And the Giants aren't using those statistics to gain the competitive edge. They exist out there. Those statistics on going for it on 4th and 2 in the other team's territory, there are statistics out there that point towards historically, the data says that is a good decision. The Giants are ignoring those statistics and data points, and that's why they're losing games. No, it's not the main reason, but it's one of the reasons why. There's a long list of reasons why the Giants are losing games, and the reason that they win their games, the number one reason, hasn't been Joe Judge in many of those wins. He has not been the reason that the Giants were winning. So take that for what it is. Joe Judge, again, I hope that he turns it around towards the end of this year, looks like the guy that can stay here for at least another year. But at the end of the day, my main argument is the Giants need to fix their general manager position, and whoever they bring in to be their next general manager needs to have complete control of the front office and the coaching staff, the autonomy to say, Joe Judge, you stay, or Joe Judge, you go. That's what the key is to me.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an interesting position. Next couple of weeks, months are going to be really, really interesting because, John Mayer's got to make a couple of tough decisions. Obviously, already fired Jason Garrett. I believe Dave Gettleman's on the way out. What happens then? Joe Judge's future definitely up in the air. But we'll be here for it. We'll be here covering all for you guys, making sure you guys got all the news you possibly can imagine. We're really consistent. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Kind of taking several different ankles on Joe Judge and trying to figure out, why people would want him to stay, or why the coaching or why the front office want him to stay, or why they want him to go. Let us know what you think in the YouTube comment section. Really would love to hear your opinions. This is definitely an interesting conversation to have, so I'm really curious to hear about what you think about it. But make sure to subscribe below on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. As always, my friends, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants podcast.